I suspect I'll be involved in Q&A, but you can give the presentation.
John, there are 3 parts to this presentation. I'll do the first 2 parts and be happy to leave the last one to you if you'd like, sir. So we have 2 large projects that are going on inside the ARIN organization right now. We've just completed a major project in the revamp and the update of the user interface for ARIN Online for all of you. I hope you're enjoying that. Also updated the website earlier this year and some related improvements to our services. And we've delved straight into these projects. We're working on a new internet routing registry at ARIN, and also we're making some RPKI improvements inside of our service offering. A bit about the routing registry to start. This project started in late Q2 of this year. The project itself, inside the ARIN organization, we have a product owner, and the product owner is John Sweeting. He's working very closely with the staff organization inside ARIN, developing this new product, and also community stakeholders to make sure the product we create meets the needs of the community. The stakeholders that we are working with include Jared Mach, Nathan Newman, Rob Seastrom, and Job Schneiders. Now, the product we're creating, based on their guidance, the feedback that we had gotten through a consultation with the community in the previous year, we are going to include both an easy point, click, and ship product and expert modes in the interfacing with the routing registry at ARIN. So there'll be an easy-to-use user interface for people who want to go in and just create objects and update the routing registry information inside ARIN Online, much like you do today with creating reassignments or updating your records inside ARIN Online. But you'll also be able to interact with us through REST and other forms. The objects to be supported initially on include route objects, route 6 objects, ASSET, OTNUM objects, INET-NUM objects. We're also looking at route set objects that I don't have on the list here with our stakeholders. There will be some integration with RPKI with the routing registry at ARIN. We're looking to have ROA information inside the routing registry that we're creating. In order to participate in this new enhanced routing registry at ARIN, we will require a services agreement to participate. And now, one of the primary reasons we're doing this is we're doing validation of the routing registry data against true ARIN registration rights information in the ARIN registry, and we have to know who the registrants are in order to do that validation. Milestones for this project. The plan for, we have already released new routing and DNS points of contact that are associated with this project. You can actually identify point of contacts inside ARIN Online now for routing and DNS. Those also satisfied 2 ACSPs that we had, 2018.15 and 2019.3. Inside the first half of next year, with a major deployment that we'll be doing, we had planned a skinny deployment at the very beginning of this, and our stakeholders came to us and said, you can't do that skinny deployment. It's not going to be useful enough to us. And they've asked for a more robust first deployment, so we're going to accommodate that. And in that first deployment, users are going to be able to create objects. They're going to have FTP access to the new routing registry so that they can find the information that's been uploaded there. And you will already have the RPKI integration that we're talking about inside that first deployment. And by the end of next year, still on target to complete the project, the core portions of this project at the end of next year, you should be able to see query information service and RTM. And the query information services, you'll be able to query it just like you do who is today and those types of things, perhaps with a nice graphic interface for it. So that's the routing registry project that we're working on at ARIN. We're very excited about that. RPKI overview. There's another slide after this one where we'll talk about the RPA and we'll talk about access to ARIN's TAL. This is not that. This is separate. In addition to that, we've been working internally on improvements to ARIN's RPKI product. So if you've been out and you've talked to Jan and you've talked to Jesse, or if you've done that at previous meetings, you'll find that they're asking folks about the user interface for interacting with ARIN's RPKI. And we've been making improvements inside that space. We've also reached out to people who have created ROAs recently, and we've engaged them and asked them if they would like to work with us over the telephone or over video to help us improve the product. And many of them have responded yes, and we've leveraged their support and their assistance there. But even more so, we're starting a project here in Q3. We're already actively working on this right now. And we're adopting RDP inside our services, and that is going to be deployed here in our next deployment. And we're also removing ROA signing requests. We're actually improving the user interface in ROA creation inside ARIN Online. There will be ARIN routing registry integration, like I had talked about before, with RPKI at ARIN. ROA population from the routing table, online ROA signing, no more queues for that. Right now, when you go in and you will go to sign a ROA, a ticket will be created and you have to wait some 10 minutes or so in order for that to turn around, and you might need a manual response from someone. We're lifting all of that out, and it's going to be much more automated for you and much simpler for you. And there's going to be incremental repository generation. Right now, you're only seeing a couple times a day where we're pushing out new information, where ROAs are being created. Maybe it's every 4 hours or something like that. But we're going to be doing that much more often during the day. And you're going to see much more real-time pushing of that information once you create it inside of our services. And also, we're improving REST provisioning for ARIN's RPKI, where you're going to be able to interface with ARIN's RPKI services more through our REST services and our REST API services. So the milestones for this work is RDP with this deployment, incremental repository generation also with this deployment. You're seeing those improvements go in immediately, as well as some of the user interface enhancements that have already been pushed out and will continue to be pushed out inside the ARIN Online application for this. In Q1, you see the lifting of the caps of the manifest and the CRL sizes. There's an ACSP related to this. There's been a lot more use of ARIN's routing registry over the last year than in the many previous years before that. It just dwarfs what's happened in the last year. And with that, we've been talking to a lot of our customers who are in there creating those ROAs and using RPKI, and they've been giving us some feedback about how we can improve the services, and also they're creating ACSPs, suggestions to the organization. So we're completing some ACSPs here. We're also going to be completing an ACSP on online ROA signing, improved REST provisioning, the routing registry integration. One of you in the audience, I think, actually submitted a suggestion for that, and that's why we're making sure that that happens. And then also in Q2, you'll see the ROA population from routing table features done. So we should be done with all of these features, improved features, by the second quarter of next year for RPKI. And behind the scenes, we're actually doing a upgrade of our internal infrastructure for RPKI. So our hardware security modules have reached the age where they need to be replaced, and we're actually doing the work to replace those right now. And that should also be finished here shortly inside this project timeline. So there are some things going on behind the scenes that you don't see in the user interface on the front. So those are updates on both the routing registry and some RPKI improvements we have. The next slide is going to be about the RPA, but before we get there, I'm going to back up and ask if there are any questions specific to the Internet Routing Registry product or the RPKI improvements that we're making. And then we're going to talk about the RPA after that.
Paul Wilson from APNIC. I just thought I'd mention that at our last meeting we had a policy proposal approved that APNIC would be implementing the AS0 ROA for unused, which is to cover unused address space in our ranges under an RFC whose number I forget. But I'm not sure if that's something that's come up in the ARIN region, but it's something that we're doing, we're implementing during the course of the next few months.
No, that's not something that's come up on our region, and it's not something that our stakeholders have discussed with us either, but we'll take a look at what discussion's going on inside the APNIC region in relation to that.
Thanks.
Front microphone.
Yeah, quick addition to that. Natalie Tredeman, RIPE NCC. We got a policy proposal in last week, exactly about the same, to basically put AS0 on unallocated space.
Excellent, thank you. So that's been introduced in the APNIC region and now the RIPE region through a policy proposal. I would expect the same thing may happen here. Back microphone.
Just a comment on the AS0 or ROAS. That's actually a good idea if we have a really secure view of the distribution of the stuff, harking back to the common data set. Finish on that. My nasty question on the IRR thing is, will there be any constraints or limitations to on the access and the use of the data that will be stored and provided there?
So our current plan is for anyone who's putting data into the ARIN routing registry, because we're doing validation against that, those route objects against the registry database, we do have to have an agreement with them in order for them to put it in, basically like the 20,000+ ARIN customers that already have that. But for actually viewing the data, there are no current plans to restrict access to that. So when there's a user interface where people can query it, and via NRTM and via FTP, we currently have no plans to limit the access to that. There's no RPA plan currently for that or anything along those lines. It would just be openly queryable, much like the routing registry that we have today. Side microphone.
Kevin Bloomberg. In regards to the AS0, it is imminent. I've been talking with the author. The complexity for our region is how much of it is actually NRPM policy, which goes through one thing, versus how much of it is an ACSP request. So that's just the complexity for our region. Otherwise, it would have been, I think, already sent in to this region. In regards to the IRR, all of the records will be tagged authenticated in the IRR-NG, I guess the next generation, the one you're working on now. Will there be anything in the new IRR that is not authenticated, ARIN stamped, basically, records?
The intent is everything in the new routing registry be validated against the registry data. So we won't allow route objects, AS set objects inside the new ARIN routing registry that do not correlate to the true registration data that we have. That's the current plan.
And my last question to that is...
What's that? Well, hold on. Can you get to the microphone and just, thanks. I just want to make sure that they hear directly from the product owner on this item.
Saying, and it's not only John Sweeting, ARIN staff, that it's not just validated against the resources, but it's also, there's only particular individuals that will be authorized to create those objects in the IRR.
Gotcha, yes. Just like with any other interaction that you would have with ARIN services, it can only be enacted by people who have the authority associated with the organization.
So for a second here, I'm going to put on a second hat, which is Kevin Bloomberg, Toronto Internet Exchange. Authenticated IRR data is a critical component for us to be able to maintain route hygiene on our route servers. And this is becoming a more and more important issue, a significantly more important issue within the Internet Exchange point realm. My question is, how many of the other, because I do know some of them are, how many of the other RIRs are allowing just authenticated data? And is this something that all of the regions should endeavor to have consistently, if possible? Because RPKI is great, but it is going to have a very long upswing. And the more valid data, the more authenticated data that we can get our hands on, the more decisions we can make from a security point of view at the exchange points, as an example.
I'm not currently aware myself of the plans at the other regional registries in relation to that. If they have information, I'd invite them to come to the microphone, but I wouldn't want to speak on their behalf in regard to that. But we can check with them, absolutely, following the meeting.
Natalie Treneman, RIPE NCC. We currently have a policy proposal to improve IRR data by checking against RPKI objects. And that is only for the subset currently of the out-of-region RIPE database IRR objects, because we did a kind of a cleanup on that with the NWI5 project last year. So we've got that pool of data, and that the policy proposal is to correlate that against RPKI data. I think that's a start in a direction.
All right, thank you. Back microphone.
Doug Montgomery Nist, can you say more about the integration between the IRR and RPKI? If I create a ROA in RPKI, will you automatically create a corresponding route object?
So Mark's going to help answer that question for us.
The answer to that is yes.
Will that route object be flagged in any way that I can tell it was created from a ROA?
That's some part of the implementation details that we need to work through, but that's something that's worthy of considering.
All right, let's go to the front microphone.
Yeah, we're going to be closing the mic shortly for the technical RPKI. We do have a discussion about the relying party agreement next.
Hi, Jonathan Stewart, Manitoba Internet Exchange. I could use AS0 on our peering prefixes, and in fact, might do that later today. My question though, so the old IRR, the current existing IRR, is going to continue to exist, and then the new one will exist beside it, both at the same time?
Is
that
go ahead.
correct?
So that's something we're actually considering for discussion with the community through consultation next year. So as we're rolling through and completing the new routing registry, we would like to have a consultation with the community to discuss potential retirement of the old routing registry, or if that's necessary or not. John.
Yeah. John Sweeting, ARIN staff, product owner of the IR. We're actually, right now, plans are we're going to follow the way that RIPE did theirs. We will actually, the current ARIN IR will be renamed ARIN non-auth. And
Don't rename.
we're going to rename Rudiker. Unless you want to become a stakeholder and argue with the rest of our stakeholders.
Well, okay, changing the semantics of names that are globally used is just a stupid idea. It is creating harm.
So that perception, Rudiger, is a wonderful perception, but when you have data that is significantly obsolete and out of date,
Everybody knows that ARIN data in the IRR is shit.
right?
So, create a new brand of quality data and give it a name, a new one, so it is not tainted by the bad history.
Rudiger, your suggestion's been heard, and we're not taking that approach. Thank you.
All right, front microphone.
All right, I'm the remote, and this is from Andrew Gallo with GWU. He would like to know what will happen to objects in the existing IRR if there's no agreement in place.
So in the existing old routing registry, after consultation with the community next year, if the community elects that we leave that up, it would be a separate routing registry that people could query where that data would stay. Or the community may elect to have us go ahead and delete or eliminate that old routing registry altogether. But we're going to have to determine that through consultation.
So I'm next.
Yes.
So there is an IRR roadmap that's published, and so far we haven't deviated from that large framework, which says the old IRR will be locked and frozen, though. So if the community opts to keep it running, it will be a static set of IRR data. I'm not sure of the functionality of a static set of IRR data, but it is possible the community will like us to keep that running, and it will be unchanged. more than likely, we'll see what the community says, at some point, the inability to change that data means it's probably a good idea not to have people referencing it after some period of transition.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, one last comment at the back microphone.
I wanted to comment a few things on the authorization state of IRR data. As I understand RPSL, you have some classes of objects that actually cannot be authorized. AS sets, and if you go for root sets, actually are things where authorization technically is not possible. Just keep that in mind, because it actually has consequences. Then I would like to make a remark on and actually fix a little bit what Natalie was reporting. The RIPE NCC IRR had been using RPSS as an authorization scheme all from the beginning. And that's essentially still in place. My understanding is that some of the other RIRs that have drawn on the RIPE NCC database code, to some extent at least, have been doing this. ARIN did decide when it started its RPSL database not to do the same. Unfortunately, in RIPE, some loopholes have been opened administratively, and the stuff that Natalie was talking about is essentially getting control over that again. But kind of the state of the RPSL technology has allowed to do authorization since the last century.
Thank you, Rudiger. Going to do one final comment, John, before we move on. Remote participant, and that'll be it for comments on this. We're moving forward to the RPA.
Thank you. This is from Anthony De La Cruz. Could we, as a major ISP that also run our own IRR, provide to you a request to flush out whole ranges that have info we are 99% sure is bad data? Dealing with folks like Radby Merritt, they make us jump through. Oh, I just said a name. Sorry, Steve. Dealing with folks, they make us jump through hoops to get the person that put us in the entry to remove.
That's something we'll take a look at, and we'll go back and read that comment from the transcript so that we can get more information on it.
Yeah, we may have to reach out directly. There's a problem with IR data in general, in that it's easy to make, it's hard to get rid of, it's hard to update, and we have some chronic circumstances where we can't necessarily do something on someone's behalf because the parties that were involved are no longer around. We need to have they need to reach out to the help desk and make the request. We'll see what we can do. John, go ahead.
Yeah, just quick. So any information that gets moved into the new IR will absolutely be validated.
Correct.
There will be no mass import of the data that's currently there.
Right. It's the old database that's very hard to get old cruft out of.
And to Anthony's question, he should contact John Worley and talk to him about what we can do in regards to this specifically.
All right, thank you, everyone. Now we're going to talk about the RPA.
Yay. Okay, so we made an announcement last week and pushed out a new version of ARIN's Relying Party Agreement. ARIN's Relying Party Agreement is the document that you agree to use ARIN's CA repository, our RPKI certificate authority. And that new RPA has been updated to reflect a few of the comments we've received over the last year. So one of the things we received is people were saying, I want to take the data in your RPKI certificate authority, and I want to use it for informational, educational, statistical purposes. And I see I can do that, but I can't do it in machine-readable form. As someone noted, nearly everything today is in machine-readable form. If it's online, it's just a question of how readable. We made clear we're not trying to get in the way of someone producing statistics, electronics, summaries, but it's not to be used for machine-readable form for redistribution for routing. Because clearly, if you're doing that, then you've put yourself in the path between the data and the people routing. We'd like them to come to the repository directly and have an agreement with us. Everyone who's using it should be a relying party. So if you have a system that's doing statistics, reporting, if you're writing research, if you need to redistribute in machine-readable form for educational research purposes, feel free to do so. If you actually want to redistribute for purposes of enabling someone else to do routing off your redistribution engine, we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, so the first thing is we've added the ability to redistribute in machine-readable form for education, research, and statistic purposes. Second thing we did is we added the provision that we're not asking in the RPA for you to indemnify us for a circumstance of our gross negligence or malfeasance on our part. A lot of people who have legal background understand that if that's really what was going on, the indemnification wasn't much anyway, but we've made it specific. And so, no, we're not asking you to indemnify us if we intend you harm. And so that was another comment that came out from the community, a sort of moral hazard issue, indemnifying ARIN if we intend to do harm or don't intend to pay the necessary level of diligence to providing the service. That's also been addressed. And then the other thing we did was we created a whole new RPA. Well, not a whole new RPA. We created a version of the Relying Party Agreement. Turns out there's some communities that already have agreements among their members. They're a research association of networks, for example, or they're some other affinity organization, or they're a service provider who have customers who they already have an agreement with their customers, and they want to redistribute ARIN's RPA data. We're fine with that. Ask us. We have an agreement called a redistributor RPA. If you're a content company, CDN, if you're a educational research network and you have members and you want to provide the RPA data, it's great. We're happy to sit down. As long as you're capable of providing the means to redistribute and meaningfully agree to the agreement, you have the financial, technical means to do that, then you can execute a redistribute agreement and you can provide it to your community. I've had a lot of people say, we don't understand why there's an RPA, we don't understand the liability. Well, maybe there isn't. You distribute it. That's great. That works. We're happy. We don't need to be the party. So that's one way to address this concern. We do see liability, which is why we do have a relying party agreement. So the new RPA is available. It's in effect. The redistributor RPA is also available. I'll take questions. Back mic, middle.
Oh, simple question. Is there a version that actually marks up the changes? Because this is a lot of legalese and figuring out and doing 3 pages of legalese diff manually, maybe a nice job for a lawyer. What I have figured out does not improve the things for me substantially, but I may be missing something, and the final judgment anyway will take considerable time until I hear back from my legal department.
2 sentences in a paragraph. If you can't find them and put the time in to find them, you probably shouldn't be using RPKI to alter your routing. It'd be kind of dangerous if you're not willing to put in to find 2 sentences in a paragraph. Thank you, Rudiga. First microphone.
Is the redistribution agreement online, or how do we?
We have it. It's available by request.
Okay, thanks.
Back center microphone.
I'm pleased that the IRR will not have an RPA, but a little mystified as to why it won't, given that it's directly linked to RPKI. And I think with a little hacking, I could implement IRR to router protocol. So just interested in how are these things different?
Do you want us to do a review of the legal risk of IRR to see if we need a specific agreement to distribute it? I just want you on the record if you're asking for that, because, you know, we have not pulled in the lawyers on that or reverse DNS service or a few other things, but can engage them.
I guess it's best left for an informal conversation.
Thank you. Far microphone, yes.
Martin Levy, Cloudflare. So for the record, for those that don't know, Cloudflare pushed for a modification of the RPA, and John and his legal staff have worked with our legal staff. And we have this, and John knows that I'm still not happy. Other people are not happy. But I'm going to take this new RPA as a data point and a release, and now work forward from it, because this is, whether you like it or not, an effort and does solve a couple of problems. It doesn't quite solve all my problems, and I know other people, if I speak for other people, it doesn't solve their problems. So my point of coming to the microphone is to say this. ARIN, please continue, both internally and via members, or members' lawyers, or members whomever, to take the path towards whatever comes after RPA version 2.
Mm-hmm.
It is easy for me to say here, burn down the house, throw it away. But I know it's not that simple. And you and I have talked about this, and anybody else who has talked with their lawyers will realize that this is a pain in the somewhere. So my simple statement to you is, please don't consider this a stopping point. Continue this. I hope other members come and say that they need something better than this, or the rest of the community does. But I also think that you should explain some of the problems of running a registry like this inside the United States in a more broader fashion, maybe the other RIR meetings, because I unfortunately don't have an answer to fixing this at the moment, and you know that.
Understood. Thank you. Any other comments on the RPA? Closing the queues. Thank you very much. We do continue to look at this. The board's interested. It came up in the board candidate forum. I'm sure it will come up again and again. And we do look at options for how to improve. We're not silent in that regard. At the same time, we've made some significant progress to date, and for people who want to actually do this in a different manner with an RPA or with their own terms and conditions, your organization can decide to redistribute this if you have a community you want to do. As I said, it's maybe your lawyers will assess the liability different than our organization. So it's available. Let us know. Thank you very much.